All right, hey everyone, welcome back. Let's jump right in. We're going deep today into some pretty intense international stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that meeting between the U.S. and Ukrainian presidents, it's gotten some attention, obviously.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Russia's reaction to the whole thing, that's the real shocker here. We've got a bunch of reports, analyses, the usual, even some whispers coming out from the Kremlin itself.
Juicy.
Yeah, and you know what? The most surprising thing out of all of this is actually how Russia is responding.
Yeah, it's it's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Everyone's focusing on the actual drama between the U.S. and Ukraine, and meanwhile, Russia is practically, celebrating.
So let's get to that. Why is Russia, throwing a party over this U.S.-Ukraine tension?
Well, you got to remember, Russia and Ukraine have been in this conflict for years now, and the U.S. has been, pretty consistently backing up Ukraine.
Right.
So, obviously, from Russia's point of view, any cracks that appear in that relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine, that's a win for them.
So they're watching their rivals fight and knowing it makes them both weaker.
Exactly. It weakens their combined opposition to Russia. And we can't forget that Russia has its own goals in the region, long-term goals.
Yeah.
And those are a lot easier to achieve if the U.S. and Ukraine aren't like a united front against them.
Okay, so what kind of goals are we talking about?
Well, things like control over key resources in the area, maintaining their influence, preventing NATO expansion, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And Russia isn't exactly being quiet about, how happy they are about all this, are they? What's with all the talk about Zelensky being a clown?
Ah, yeah. That's Dmitry Medvedev.
Yeah.
One of Putin's, closest allies. And yeah, he didn't hold back on social media, but calling Zelensky a clown, that's calculated. That's all part of a strategy. It's information warfare, something Russia's very good at.
Information warfare. So it's not just tanks and troops anymore.
No, not at all. It's about controlling the narrative, shaping how the public sees things, and ultimately getting what you want without actually firing a shot.
Wow.
And that clown comment, that's meant to, undermine Zelensky, make him look weak on the world stage, make the U.S. question if he's even worth supporting.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's a pretty effective tactic. Think about it. A clown doesn't exactly scream strong leader, does it?
Right. And they're not even stopping there. Some Russian state media outlets, they've gone as far as comparing Zelensky to trash. It's straight up propaganda.
Feels like they're really trying to paint this picture of him, Zelensky, as being incompetent, unreliable, maybe even a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. They're tapping into anxieties people already have, doubts, and they're doing it well. It's working. It's a way to turn people against Zelensky, both inside Ukraine and internationally. And what's really interesting? We actually have a source, someone very close to the Kremlin, and they say that Putin is privately enjoying this whole situation a lot.
Wait, someone inside the Kremlin is spilling the beans. Okay, now I'm really interested. This is getting good.
Right. And this source, who obviously wants to stay anonymous, they say that Putin sees this as a huge opportunity to exploit this rift between the U.S. and Ukraine to make their relationship even worse and maybe even, push the U.S. to completely abandon Ukraine.
Wow. That's a high-stakes game they're playing.
Yeah.
So how would they actually do that? What steps would they take?
So far, it's not like we've seen any, crazy military moves or anything like that, but they're definitely, really pushing their information warfare. It's kind of like planting these seeds of doubt, trying to stir things up, create chaos inside Ukraine and between Ukraine and its allies.
Classic divide and conquer.
So it's not just the Zelensky stuff. It's a whole narrative they're pushing.
Oh, yeah. Totally. They want people to think Zelensky's weak, the U.S. can't be trusted as a partner, and that Ukraine would be better off, siding with Russia. And they're using everything they can to get that message out. Social media, the news, even these seemingly grassroots groups, it's all part of it. This reminds me of what happened back in 2016 in the U.S. election, all that stuff with Russia, interfering with fake news and all that. It feels kind of similar, they're using the same playbook, trying to manipulate what people think and create all this distrust.
You're exactly right. Russia's got a long history of using information warfare to get what they want. And honestly, they've gotten pretty good at it. They know how to take advantage of divisions that already exist, how to make certain voices louder while quieting others, and just create this atmosphere where no one knows what to believe.
It's kind of creepy, to be honest. Makes you wonder what Zelensky's thinking right now. Goes to Washington looking for support and instead gets, publicly criticized. Talk about adding insult to injury.
Yeah, he's in a tough spot for sure. He needs the U.S. for military aid, the financial support, but he also doesn't want to come across as, weak or like he's giving in. It's a
Yeah.
really tricky balance to strike.
And then on top of all that, you have these European leaders, some of them who are, maybe a little more friendly towards Russia, calling for direct talks with Putin. That's going to make things even more complicated for Zelensky.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It adds another layer to this already very tense situation. Europe isn't exactly, on the same page when it comes to how to handle Russia. And those differences, those are playing out right now in real time. You have some countries who want to be really tough on Russia and others who think a more, diplomatic approach is the way to go.
So let's recap. We've got this standoff between Russia and Ukraine. And we've got the U.S. president who seems like he's, maybe running out of patience. And then we have a divided Europe trying to figure out how to respond, it feels like. Things are, at a turning point. And what happens in the next, few weeks could have some serious consequences, not just for Ukraine, but for the whole region.
Yeah, this isn't just some regional conflict anymore. This is like a global power struggle playing out on a very public stage. And the stakes, they couldn't be higher.
This whole discussion about information warfare, propaganda, and global power struggles.
Yeah.
It's heavy stuff. So for our listeners out there, what's the key takeaway here? What should they be focused on as this situation develops?
Well, I think that the main thing to take away from all this is that, we're living in a world where information itself, it's a weapon.
Wow.
And Russia, they're using that weapon really, really well.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that, we can't just sit back and just take in whatever news or information we see.
Yeah.
We've got to think critically about it, question what we're seeing, consider who's saying it, try to get different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like we're all, caught up in this massive game of information chess, whether we know it or not.
That's a good way to put it.
And every move we make, the things we believe, what we share, it can have, real world consequences.
For sure. And the scary part is that a lot of the time we don't even know who's playing, who's pulling the strings, what they're even aiming for.
Right. Yeah.
It's just this constant fog of, uncertainty and distrust.
Yeah, this whole situation really highlights how delicate things are in international relations,
Yeah.
We tend to think of global politics as this big stage where countries are making these carefully planned moves.
Right.
But in reality, things can change so fast based on, relationships between leaders, what the public thinks, even just a single tweet,
Oh, absolutely. We've seen how just one meeting, a couple of harsh words, can set off this chain reaction that could, completely change alliances, shift the balance of power.
So what does all this mean for, for us, for the average person trying to understand this crazy world?
It means we have a responsibility to stay informed, to talk about these things, have real discussions, and to demand transparency from our leaders, hold them accountable. We can't just be passive, sit back and watch.
Yeah.
Not in this age of information warfare.
It all comes back to, critical thinking, doesn't it? We need to be aware of the tactics that are being used to manipulate us, to be skeptical of, easy answers, those simple stories that sound good but maybe aren't the whole picture. We have to really put in the effort to find the truth.
I totally agree. The best way to fight back against, this flood of misinformation, it's having informed, engaged citizens.
Absolutely. So just to sum things up, it seems like Russia's pretty happy with how this whole U.S.-Ukraine meeting shook out.
Yeah.
They're using it to their advantage, pushing their own goals, using this information warfare to try and make Zelensky look bad, and maybe even get the U.S. to rethink their support for Ukraine.
And that brings up a really important question for all of us to consider.
Yeah.
In this time where information is being used as a weapon, how do we make sure that truth wins? How do we make sure, reason wins?
That's something we're thinking about. We encourage you to, keep digging, keep asking questions, keep coming to your own conclusions. And as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.